to bring in Brian Comiskey from CES. He is the Futurist at the Consumer Technology Association, and of course hosts, as part of hosting, the amazing CES event that takes place every single year. Great to have you back here on Double Tap with us, Brian. It's been a while.
Yeah, but it's always great to talk with you, and yeah, I hope you've had a good year so far.
I have had a great year, yeah. And look, I mean, here at Double Tap, we have been talking, of course, all about accessible tech and, managing to fill every single day with talk about this amazing world of technology, frankly, driven by a huge upsurge in artificial intelligence, which has, not only dominated mainstream tech, but also dominated the assistive tech space as well. We're heading into another Consumer Electronics Show for 2025, another exciting year. I'm guessing AI is at the heart of it again this year?
It's definitely one of the major trends that we'll see at this upcoming show, and it's really building off the CES 2024. And to be honest, AI has been a part of our show for years. Something I like to stress to folks is we've actually been living with AI for a long time. Netflix, most of your recommendations, AI algorithm. If you're wearing a Fitbit like I am, most of your steps and the algorithms behind it, AI. But what CES 2025 will really be about is a couple of angles on the artificial intelligence side. Let's start with the consumer one. For consumers, a lot of that is going to be an upgrade cycle for a lot of the devices that you use on a day-to-day basis, whether that is a smartphone, a television, or even your car. It's about not just, improved information for your car dashboard or better visuals and audio quality on your phone and your TV. It's the ability to add more features to really make your day-to-day life seamless. So for a television, putting an AI chip can allow you to unlock a really good example of this is e-commerce features where you can directly shop from your television. Say you pause a channel and you say, I like the outfit of that person. Being able to shop there. That's what this AI chip sort of starts to unlock and interact. It also creates a lot of the accessibility features that Samsung and LG were at the show in terms of auto-generated subtitles, a lot of the accessibility features in terms of font size being more catered directly to you is a major focus. And that translates to the phone as well on like Galaxy AI, but that's the consumer angle. The other side of it really is going to be this enterprise show. And it's the reason we call ourselves really CES now is last at CES 2024, about 40% of our exhibitors had some form of enterprise technology, and that trend continues at the show this year. So AI will be across the entire show floor, dedicated sections in North Hall of the Convention Center, alongside a lot of the enterprise tech, because we've seen a lot of businesses invest in a lot of different chips and hardware to unlock the AI revolution. Now it's about, well, what are the innovations that are actually giving us that return? Where's the productivity gaining? And we'll see a lot of digital twin technology from companies like Siemens, NVIDIA, who is going to keynote to kick us off with Jensen Huang, the co-founder and CEO, is going to talk about AI technologies, digital twins. They have one of the entire Earth for climate change and weather forecasting, as well as just how do you make operations at a factory more efficient and smart. And there's startups that will showcase that, like Neural Concept, or how do you build your own AI agent or GPT? There's a company called Chatbase that does that. So AI will have a major part of the show, and it fits into this overall theme, which is this idea of digital coexistence. We've been digitally transforming. If you've heard the phrase digital transformation, we've been doing that. Arguably, we've transformed. Nowadays, it's about how does technology collaborate, co-work, cooperate, coordinate, really coexist with us on a day-to-day basis, because we're recording this virtually right now. We have a virtual life almost at parity with our physical life. And so technology is playing a role in making that as seamless and frictionless as possible.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was thinking about social media just the other night and thinking how that's almost become a bit of a virtual world in itself as well. We have our personalities perhaps that we use on social media. Some use it for good, some use it for bad, but ultimately there are virtual personalities. Those people who say certain things online might never say them publicly, but they would say them there. So we've kind of moved into that world in our minds, right? But we don't necessarily think of it in that way. So yeah, that's quite interesting. And, as having been at CES before, having seen the events and seeing the Uber helicopter and, the flying cars and all that stuff, it was always the place where, you saw the future of tech. But I'm guessing what we're seeing now, because, the tech itself and the future of tech seems to all be moving into our devices, where, of course, you still have lots and lots of tech out there, and you're going to be having the driverless cars. And that is a conversation in itself as well, because regulations are opening up. These are becoming real in the world. We're no longer just seeing them at events like CES. So what I'm saying is, I guess, or what I'm seeing is a trend towards the actual out there. So where before you would go to CES and say, here's what's coming, now it's here, and how are people using it?
Exactly. It really is about, I like to think about innovation as either revolutionary or evolutionary. Revolutionary are those moonshot, those leaps that really feel like the future just happened overnight. I think that's how a lot of people felt with how ChatGPT really blew up. I would also put in the discovery of fusion, the possibility of nuclear fusion a couple years ago as one. The other one is evolutionary. That means iterative. How do you build the technology of the future is kind of step by step in the present. And I'm glad you brought up autonomous vehicles and self-driving, because mobility is going to be naturally another massive part of the show on West Hall. We actually just announced today that we're going to have our leadership and technology dinner keynote is going to be one of the co-CEOs of Waymo. So we're going to have her
Amazing.
there. And I think that's because the regulatory environment is really shifting, being more open. You've seen Mercedes getting the ability to run autonomously in California with the first approved vehicle for it. And that's going to be a major show for discussion. Autonomy, whether it's the vehicle themselves. Waymo has partnered with Hyundai to bring electric vehicles into their robo-taxi fleet. Also, Mobileye and Ava and Apex AI at the show are going to talk about autonomous capabilities for consumers, but also for trucking. Because really, at the end of the day, I think there was this expectation, this almost maybe like trying to think, Minority Report style. You have the automated cars for every consumer. So innovation doesn't always start from consumer to enterprise. Sometimes it goes the other way. And that's why CES having enterprise is important, because I believe that autonomy is probably going to come from those enterprise industrial use cases like trucking, where there's workforce gaps, or robo-taxis, where it's just about making traffic flow more efficient. And so really at the end of the day, mobility will be very much on display. And what sounds very futuristic, I mean, Minority Report was a very futuristic film. It's already starting to happen today. And Waymo's hitting these rides of, hitting in the thousands and tens of thousands of rides already to the airport, for example. So how that moves forward is something that will be very much on display, I think, at the show. And mobility is a really good example of that.
Yeah, like you say, I mean, some of this comes out of what might appear to some as the mundane rather than the exciting. I mean, one area in particular, of course, one value of driverless Waymo cars at the moment, and indeed other driverless cars, is safety. That's what it's all about. But, also for us, for me as a blind guy, sitting here being able to, potentially, get in a car and go from A to B without having, a talkative taxi driver, or, anything else, or, having to, or just being able to go myself to places, or, make sure that I can go and pick my wife up, but do it myself, brings that independence in a way that, it just is not available for me right now at all. And, that is obviously, there are a lot of regulations to go through in different parts of the world. I'm in the UK, so there's a lot of regulations going on, but I know the government are in talks about it. In the US, of course, they've moved much faster. So, we can see that this is starting to roll out quite literally on the roads. Yeah, quite literally. It's amazing.
Yeah, and and I'm glad you've brought up the accessibility angle of it too, right? Because that's ultimately, and I've talked about this on stage before, and I say is secondary research shows if you build something with inclusive tech design, you make usually 1.6 times more revenue than your basic product, because you're bringing in more people. Isn't that, even if it's not just the right thing to do, it's also the economic thing to do at the end of the day. But I use the phrase mobility very clearly when we're talking about autonomous vehicles in motion, because it's not just about necessarily a car. There's companies that are taking the technologies for mobility from a vehicle and recognizing, wait, humans are mobility devices, if you want to get really technical. And there's a company called Glidance that will be at Eureka Park, our startup zone at the Venetian. They're using an autonomous guide robot for people who are blind or low vision to navigate the streets, because mobility isn't just about the macro and mass transit side. There's the micro side, whether that's, sometimes you think about it as a bike or a scooter, but I think about micromobility all the way to the person. And we're seeing, oh, wait, we can take all these sensors and technologies from our car and put it into a small robot that, say you can't get a seeing guide dog, what about something, or maybe you're allergic to dogs too, right? Like thinking of like
Hmm.
all through these layers of who is using it, because maybe that's the probably the best way to say this, the overall theme of the show outside of technology. It's human-centric innovation. You're making things for people at the end of the day. And a company like Glidance is a good example of that, of taking, ooh, a breakthrough in one category actually can help us on an individual level. And that's what it's for. That's what it's all about.
And this is what I mean about the idea of when we went to CES, we looked for the future of tech. What we're looking at now is the future kind of almost getting inching closer and closer and closer to the point where it's pretty much here. Really, now what we're seeing is the refinement of all of this. That's what it feels like to me. That's what it sounds like from what you're saying.
Evolutionary in innovation, right? That iterative
That's a good thing
process.
because it's
Yep.
it's becoming real for people, right? I mean, you can only future gaze so much, right? I mean, we can say, okay, well, next it's flying houses. Who knows? I mean, you could just say that, right? But it doesn't mean anything. But the practical thing, of course, is with driverless cars now. We see that. We see how it's going to work. We're talking now about nuance of how it will integrate into our world. In what way? Will it be a taxi? Will it be a bus? How will that operate, and how will that work for people who are disabled? And of course, that will help many people when they're out and about. Will it cut down on car crashes? And all these things are really important. There is one area, though, that I imagine is causing some concern at the minute, and that is, of course, the incoming administration in the US. There's a lot of concern around tariffs. What's your read on that? Is that being talked about much at the moment?
Yeah, certainly tariffs has become a major question mark that we get here at CTA quite often. I work in the research department, so I won't speak to the policy side. There's policy experts that, but I will say when we look at it, I think this is the biggest question we get is what does the tariff impact look like? And I mean, for the U.S., there's billions in trade that could, with Mexico and Canada in particular, that could be at risk. There's a household impact. If you have something like a 10 to 20% across the board tariff, and then a 60 to 110% tariff on Chinese imports, that could actually dramatically increase household expenses in the US by up to somewhere of $7,600. And that's annually, and that's something from the budget lab at Yale. And so that means, especially in our industry, that means rising prices for electronics, because if you think about how global the supply chain is to build them, and then there's an inflationary impact. I mean, we've been dealing, and that's been a pain point for consumers, is things costing more. You could see that there could be a 10 to 33% increase in inflation post-pandemic that could be the result of or sorry, it would be a 1.4 to 5.1% increase in prices, which would account for almost up to a third of inflation since the pandemic. Those are some real outsolds, because at the end of the day, consumers pay for a tariff. That's really what it is at the end of the day. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of discussion about it. I think there's going to be a lot of questions. I will say, I think anyone who says that they know all the answers now before the admin and know exactly how it's going to go is probably trying to, build you a bridge nowhere. I think we're going to obviously collaborate and see what actually happens and how we navigate it from there. But yeah, tariffs could have a real impact on the household in a way that I think a lot of people don't want to be paying more for goods. So I think that's something that we're certainly going to be watching very closely.
For those who don't follow CES, talk a little bit about your commitment to accessibility. I mean, I can say from personal experience that it goes way beyond just words.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. And I think that really starts with the fact that, so if, for those not familiar with CES, most influential trade show in the world, powered by the Consumer Technology Association. We're a not-for-profit technology trade association for North America. And part of our work is we actually have a whole foundation dedicated to really ensure that tech is accessible for disabled communities as well as for aging communities, really focusing on this idea of inclusion in tech. So that foundation throughout the year is working to identify and support and offer grants to companies in the space that are helping meet that mission, right, of making technology more accessible for more people. And at the show, that comes into a factor where we have our Eureka Park, which is our startup zone. We have an accessibility contest that I've talked about, where we've award out winners to it. We have an accessibility roundtable, which from the foundation, which puts a spotlight on those discussions with industry leaders. And we even do parts of our work is we even try to make sure with Giving Tuesday post Black Friday to really promote that work. That's all part of CES, as part of our work at CTA. This is kind of cool, and this gets to it. We have these grants that we provide, as I mentioned, to companies where we can help fund. We do have a variety of funds that we're able to invest in, and I get to work as a reviewer on those grants. A lot of us do, and I love a lot about my job. I really do. I love the future side. Every time our executive director of the foundation, Steve Ewell, reaches out for volunteers, I always, one, and the first one to do it, but secondly, I tell him, like, this is why I got involved in the technology space to begin with. We talk about this phrase, tech for good, and that puts meaning to it. Maybe I'm getting sounding a very, like, I'm not trying to sound somber. It's just, it means a lot. I think how technology can help build any community. I'm LGBT, so technology that's designed for people like me as well is really important too. And I think that's a mission that we really do with our foundation funds, as well as some of our D&I investment fund partnerships that we do as well. So I think, yeah, it's more than words, it's actions. And that's something that it's a wonderful to be a part of.
It's always an amazing show, and I can't wait to hear all the news that comes out. It always feels like someone turns on the fire hose just at the beginning of January. I can only imagine what it must be like for you on the floor.
Yeah, I joke with folks because I'm usually doing tours. I'm doing various other advice, so I'll see the floor through the tour lens. But I joke I don't actually fully see the show usually till the end, because then it's usually my time. So yeah. But it's a brilliant bit of, like, and the way I describe it might sound overwhelming, but it's not. It's just, it's innovation and to be honest, serendipity at its core, where you just discover something new that changes people. And, I sit for really since Labor Day here, since September, I've been kind of mentally living in 2025 and planning and prepping and thinking about what's going to be on the show floor. I could do this for months, as I've described. I will still be surprised on the show floor, and that's what keeps me coming back every time, and seeing where crowds are that I maybe didn't expect to see a crowd or didn't know. That's the best part. That's the other reason why I do it too, is it makes no day or no show the same over and over. It's always different.
Well, good luck when it comes, and we look forward to hearing all about it. And of course, the accessibility story will continue on. We will continue reporting it here on Double Tap. Brian, thanks as always.
Thank you so much, Stephen. It was a pleasure to rejoin you again.